Hey guys, today we have Umair joining us on People and Perspectives. He will be sharing his journey in the world of blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. Now, I just want to disclaim that whatever we discuss here today, I'll be asking him a bunch of questions about his experiences, and he's going to explain to us a simplified version of blockchain tech and his engagements and his points of view on cryptocurrency. He's had a fair share of success in it in the past 4 years. However, I want to point out that this is in no way, shape, or form encouraging anyone to go into it or to participate in it. It's just an exploration, very much so, on what blockchain really is and what cryptocurrency really is and how it all affects us and how he has gone about uh, venturing in this side of things. Thank you, Ume, and very much appreciated. I hope you guys enjoy this video. And Ume has mentioned that if anyone has any questions in regards to cryptocurrency, as he has quite a bit of experience in this field, he welcomes the questions. So please go ahead and post in the comments. And if you like this video, let me know. If you want more, he's definitely going to be sharing more, and we're going to go diving deeper into the topic of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and all that. Do engage, do let me know. Thanks and enjoy the video. Shall we dive into people and perspectives?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we will talk a little bit about blockchain in general, because like me, I have not much clue on the tech behind blockchain, and I would like to know more. And then we can move on to like cryptocurrency, which is essentially a form of blockchain, as I understand it.
Yeah, it's a use case for blockchain, if you want to put it in that way. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go. Tell us, I think we begin by you telling us a bit of your backstory when you went into blockchain/crypto. I understand that you have had some success, over the past few years in this line. Amazing, congratulations. Share with us, however you feel to begin going about it. But after you share your experience, probably let us know a bit on blockchain.
Yeah, okay. So let me get right into it, right? How did I get into it? I actually started my career after university, like most of us do, in 2012 in banking. I started off in Citibank in Malaysia, worked there for 2 years, and then I was in Standard Chartered Bank for another 3 years. So I was basically working until like 2016, 2017, and I was doing corporate banking more specifically within banking. And that was fun. But I mean, the target always was of course, for me to start something of my own. Like that's something that always appealed to me. And emerging tech was always something that I was always into anyway. Like I just reading about it, like finding out what's been going in the industry. And to be honest, by 2016, 2017, Bitcoin or blockchain was something that I had heard about quite a bit already. Like because Bitcoin first became popular in 2012, right? So like definitely had heard about it. But what really kind of got me into it was I was actually doing a project within banking. The bank that I worked for, Standard Chartered Bank, and they had just signed a contract with this company called Ripple, which is now the third, fourth, or actually they're still in the top 10 largest cryptocurrency in the world. And Ripple was going around signing banks left, right, and center up to work with them, and they had signed up the bank. And I was always into crypto. So when we signed this project, they kind of wanted, within our bank, they wanted to do a project, get people from all departments in and work on this little thing to see if Ripple can actually be implemented into the cross-border payments. Like the more specific use of Ripple would be cross-border payments, right? Like, okay. And we'll get into that in a second, but that's still one of the best use cases of crypto, cross-border payments, right? And then of course that translates into international trades and stuff that banks do. And so that's where Ripple can be handy, right? So I was doing that project and I really got into Ripple during that time. And we were talking with people from Ripple, and they were telling us. And you know what appealed to me, obviously, straight away was how easy it was to buy Ripple, right? Like, because
Right.
like if you're working in, like, if you, it's not that easy to buy stocks, right? First of all, there are certain barriers to entries that exist in investing in different asset classes. But crypto, one of the reasons why it's so popular, one of the reasons why it's actually gotten so big, it's actually the barriers to entry are very, very low, right? Anyone and for any amount can actually get involved, right? Like, one of the biggest barriers to entry with investing stocks is just the amount. Nobody will let you buy 10 ringgit of their stock, right? You need like minimum, you need to maybe open a Maybank account and put down a minimum deposit of 10, 20,000 ringgit at the minimum. Back in the day used to be, wealth management used to be 200,000, which in itself is actually a barrier to entry, because as you know, in Malaysia, 10, 20,000 ringgit is not a small amount for people just to have it lying around in their bank account, right? So as a result, 70, 80% of the population can't participate in the stock markets. But crypto is very different. You can get involved for 10 ringgit a month or 5 ringgit a month, even if you wanted to, right? So that's what appealed to me initially, because I wasn't, really rolling in it back then. So I was like, okay, like, I had just gotten a bit of a bonus in my banking job. So I got into Ripple at that time. And Bitcoin, obviously. And that's my advice to anyone who gets into crypto, that if you're getting into crypto, so many people come up to me and go like, oh, I'm buying this ABZ coin. And I'm just like, if you're getting into crypto, make sure you have some Bitcoin, right? And we'll get into why that's important. But, it's the top largest market cap cryptocurrency in the world. It just makes so much sense, right? Like,
Right.
anyway, that's where I got involved in crypto in 2016. I think it was like late 2016. This project had started with my bank. And by like June the next year, 2017, June, like crypto industry just kind of like started blowing up. Bitcoin was, I myself didn't know what was happening. Like Bitcoin, it started going to like $2,000, which kind of like seems funny, but back then it was a lot. Like, oh, Bitcoin's $2,000. And Ripple was like, we were getting in at like 4 cents, 5 cents. Suddenly Ripple was like 30 cents. And everyone who was into Ripple was like so excited. Oh shit, it's 5 times. And before anything happened, like in June 2017, December 2017, Bitcoin just went to like 20K, and that's, I mean, like how I got into crypto, that's where basically kind of it all changed for me. Whatever money I had got into crypto a year ago was worth significantly more now. And basically my first aim was like, look, this is my opportunity where I have a chance of doing something on my own, right? Which is something that I always wanted. And essentially what I did was I quit my job in banking back then. And the first thing that I started doing was I started trading crypto, obviously, as most of us do. But one of the first things that we actually did was, me and a group of friends, and eventually became my business partners, we set up a crypto fund. And what we were doing, what was hot in 2017 were ICOs, initial coin offerings, were really, really hot back then.
Right.
And essentially, the aim of the fund was to identify new projects which are doing ICOs and get into them. That fund was actually very successful. The overall performance of that fund was about 6,000% over like 6 months. So that was very, very fruitful for all of us and everyone who actually invested in the fund. And from there, we basically actually set up an exchange, a cryptocurrency derivatives exchange. That was my next project. It's called bitorb.com. It is now defunct. Unfortunately, we started it in 2018, 2019, early 2019, and we had it running until September 2020, when the crypto exchange market has become extremely competitive. When we started our exchange, there were like total of 4 derivatives exchanges in the market. Right, BitMEX being the biggest one, and there was Bybit and Deribit, right? But come 2020, all the big exchanges in the world, like Binance, and Huobi's of the world, are also having their own derivatives exchange. And for a player like us, it's almost like, imagine if Amazon stepped into your market, you are going to get driven out.
Yeah.
So it's basically like Binance stepped into our market and we essentially got driven out of it. But that wasn't bad. It was all right, because honestly, like all the 3 founders, it was the same guys who had started the fund with. We got into crypto, and this bull run, we actually just shut in 2020 September. And we, after that, this bull run has already been quite lucrative for all the other founders as well, including myself. So it's like, It's not hard feeling, but no hard feelings, I don't regret it that we had to shut it a year after we started it. But obviously, it was a shame. We would have liked to continue doing that project, but yeah, that's basically how I got into crypto and what I have done in crypto so far. Now, aside from all of this, I do a lot of things as well. I do a lot of crypto talks in even in universities and for the Blockchain Association of Malaysia, and just basically someone who's really enthusiastic about the blockchain enthusiast is one of the things that says on my LinkedIn. Yeah. So with that, I guess what I can get into is the second part of your question: what blockchain really
Before we
is.
go there, can I just ask you
Yeah,
something based on your sharing? So just
yeah, yeah.
curious, you were always doing crypto trading, right? Like even when you were focused on BitOrb, like or is it like when you were focused on the BitOrb, you reduced that, and then like now you're doing more of that, or was it something that you've
I
always
mean,
been doing?
no, yeah. I mean, I think pretty much since I got into crypto, like full time, 2017 or whatever, I have been doing trading in some capacity
Yeah,
always.
yeah.
Obviously, in fact, what was BitOp was a exchange essentially, right? So if anything, especially during the early days of BitOp, I was doing more trading, because we were doing our market research and stuff like that. I was trading
Yeah.
on exchanges I had never traded on because I wanted to see what different exchanges are offering out there in terms of interface and products and stuff like that. So if anything, at least in the beginning, I was doing a lot more trading. When things got busy on the other side of things, then I was doing maybe a little bit less. But I mean, to answer your question, yes, I think trading is something that I've been doing pretty much throughout for the last 3 years,
Right.
and all kinds of trading. Like the derivatives is specifically what I do, because that's where I feel like you can get the highest returns, and derivatives are pretty much crazy in crypto, right? Like Bitcoin as it is a very volatile asset, but on top of that, when you add like 125x leverage,
Yeah.
it becomes even more yummy. So yeah, I mean, yeah, to answer your question, yes, I have been doing it throughout. And to be very honest with you, it has, I would say, been my main source of income for the last 3 years as well.
Okay.
Especially after I left my job, because even during BitOrb days, as
Yeah.
founders, we were just taking like a 5K salary,
Right.
just to have it on the books. 5K is not doesn't pay all my bills, like. So crypto has, I would say, trading has been my main source of income as well for the last 3 years.
All right. Follow up question.
Mm.
So for a person who's like wanting to bring their attention to like crypto and stuff, right? Um, they don't necessarily have to be an active trader. They can also be like a passive investor. There are like way more than one ways to go about like putting some time and money into crypto, right?
Of course. I mean, look, the thing is that, yeah, exactly. So that, let's not get confused. I am a trader. Everybody doesn't have to be a trader, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Crypto is just way more than trading right now, man. Like literally, like we'll get into it for the duration of this
Yeah.
call, but crypto is so much more than trading. It is a technology. You can the ways of participating in crypto are very a lot, right? So you don't even have to be a passive investor. You could be a programmer who can now start coding, like you can start coding for Ethereum on the Ethereum blockchain, or the other blockchains that exist, and you can start like earning bounties. Like crypto is a very decentralized world, right? So you could actually just go to the Bitcoin website, you could just go to the Ethereum website, and you can actually contribute to the network yourself. If you're a good coder, that's another way of getting involved in crypto as well, right? If you are an art enthusiast, there's one thing we'll talk about in the duration of this call, like NFTs. That's another way of getting involved in. And if you're an artist, that's a new way of actually selling your art, right? And if you're somebody who's actually just like a rich man, you got a lot of money sitting there in fixed deposits earning like 5-6% a year, there's even more ways of getting involved in crypto. For example, like you can lend that money directly in a P2P manner to other people, and earn interest on that. So the active trading, passive investing, and then there's like 10 other ways of getting into crypto in today's day and age.
Amazing, amazing, dude.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll cover
yeah,
all that in like
yeah.
the other call. I guess the next one.
Mhm.
That's super interesting, man. Somehow you touched
Yeah,
on
yeah, we
art.
can actually talk about that for like a whole hour of what are the ways you can actually get involved in crypto, because
Yeah.
there are many. There's some that would you don't even have to put money in it, but you're gonna have to put, like, there has to be some kind of capital that goes in, either human capital or labor capital. So either you
Right.
could work for crypto, or
Right.
you could spend on crypto. But you could be someone who has no money to invest in it. You can contribute other skills towards the industry and earn it as well. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So
Mhm.
I'm a noob. Let me know more about blockchain, please.
Right. Okay. So I think like since this is our first call, I won't get into like too. I'm going to try to keep this as layman as possible.
Perfect.
Right, like blockchain. Like, so I'm going to use some terminologies. I do this when I do lectures in university. I'm going to use this some terminologies that if I stand in front of like a crypto maximalist or a Bitcoin maximalist, they'll be like, no, that's not what it is. But I have found that this is probably the easiest way of explaining crypto to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do it anyway, right? And then of course, as you learn more about it, you're going to figure out what it is and what it's not. So what blockchain essentially is, right? Blockchain is essentially a database, right? Because what is database? Database is a collection of data, right? And that's essentially what blockchain is. But what's interesting about blockchain is that blockchain is a decentralized database, right? It doesn't essentially belong to someone. So if you are using Mongo database or any centralized database service, or like a bank, let's say, right? Their data isn't stored in their data center, which is centrally controlled by Standard Chart Bank, or whatever bank. I used to work there, so I always use that as an example. Can go and change and manipulate that data. Not manipulate is not the right word, but can actually make changes to it anytime and to suit them, right? And essentially, that's what money is today, right? Money is essentially centrally distributed by banks, by central governments, or by central banks and governments, and it's very, very centralized. So coming back to blockchain, blockchain is a database. It's a decentralized database which doesn't belong to anyone, right? And one of the used cases of this technology is money, which is Bitcoin, right? But blockchain technology itself can actually have a lot of other usages, right? Because of this nature of it being decentralized, it not being able to be manipulated. It can be used for contracts, right? It's
Right.
known as smart contracts.
Right.
And then the many other usages that come along with smart contracts, which we'll talk about, right? And
Right.
essentially, what happens is, what does the two words block or chain means is that, like, it's a database, and you, let's say, are entering data into this database, right? And now entering data is also a very simplified term, because the way data gets entered into blockchain is very different from what you would imagine. There's nobody sitting and typing data into it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just
No
got
worries.
disconnected there. But essentially, once the data is being filled into a block in
Yeah.
a blockchain. And
Right.
essentially, why it's called a blockchain is because it's a chain of these data blocks,
Okay.
right? So now let's come to the main use case of blockchain that exists today, which is Bitcoin. So how does this blockchain work on Bitcoin, right? So imagine you and I, Justin, we are sitting in a room, right? And we want to do a transaction. You want to pass me some money, and you have, like, let's say, we have another friend, we have a third friend, right? So I will pass you the cash, right? And our third friend will verify that, yes, I have seen Umair and Justin do this transaction. He will be the validator of this transaction. And then what will happen is that a lot of people will then come into this room, and they will keep on doing this transaction. And we all will keep on verifying, yep, I saw that happen, I saw that happen, I saw that happen. And eventually, this room will get filled up. There won't be enough place for more people to be in this room. This room will then become a block, and there'll be another room that will come up right next to it, and people will then go into this room and do it. And essentially, what the blockchain of Bitcoin is, essentially what the blockchain of Bitcoin is, it's just blocks of transactions that have happened over the years,
Okay.
right? So that's like, so essentially, it is a decentralized database which holds transactions, right? Another way that people explain blockchain is that it's a ledger, right?
Right.
It's a ledger. And that is a very accurate way of explaining it as well, because it is exactly that. It's a ledger. It's a ledger of, from day one when Bitcoin was created, 2008. Every single transaction that has happened since that date is in a ledger on the blockchain.com, right? And you
Okay.
can see every single transaction that has happened from day one. And what I was explaining to you about the blockchain and why it's called blockchain is that those transactions are stored in those blocks. So, people find it like very intimidating. The word blockchain is sometimes very, very intimidating. It's like, oh, what does this mean? This completely alien technology. It's just blocks of transactions which are in a chain, and it's a ledger for everyone to see. Why this matters, right? Why should this matter to us? Why this matters is because, you see, today in 2020, there are a lot of freedoms we have. There are a lot of freedoms we don't have, but there are a lot of freedoms that we have as well. Specifically through the advent of social media, the freedom to at least say anything, the freedom to information. Like back in the day, there used to be a lot of censorship. A lot of information was what you got from your media, but you have freedom of knowledge today, freedom of information sharing and gaining. And through the internet, a lot of communities which tend to be discriminated in other countries, based on race, gender, are now able to come together and create communities online. So we have these freedoms today. One of the freedoms that we don't have anywhere in the world is freedom over your money, right? Your money is always held either at a bank, and essentially your money is centrally distributed by a government. Ringgit, right? What is the value essentially behind the ringgit? It's a piece of paper. If you give me 100 ringgit, I tear it and I give it back to you, it's now worth nothing, right? The only reason why 100 ringgit is 100 ringgit is because your government says it is, right? And so why what I'm telling you, the ledger of blockchain in form of Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, why that's important is because for the first time in our history as humans, or not, I would say not first time, but like basically since fiat system was invented, the fiat system of money that we use today was invented, it's the first time that we have a currency which is not owned by a central bank or a country. As a result, what happens is that all the transactions that happen on the blockchain as well do not actually need a bank for these transactions to happen. So one of the biggest reasons why we have all those freedoms I was talking about and not freedom of our money, because pretty much there's no other way of doing transactions if you're not with a bank. And in 2021, and that's become even more impossible because cash usage has gone down, right? So you almost need a credit card and like an online bank account in order to be a normal citizen of this world, right? If you're unbanked, especially in a country like Malaysia, you can't do anything, right? But essentially, the Bitcoin and blockchain is an alternative to that. And I mean, why do we need an alternative? Because as a former banker, and a lot of people will tell you that there are a lot of problems that the currency is centralized. There are a lot of problems that exists on a political front. And imagine like, imagine if you controlled all the US dollars in the world, right? Definitely you will be doing some things which are in your self-interest and which are maybe damaging to other citizens of the world, right? Or if you controlled any currency for that matter, right? Yuan is another pretty strong currency, so is the euro, right? So why is it important that currency is decentralized? Is because a lot of people argue, and I am of that view as well, that it is a much more fair way of distributing wealth to people in terms of what happens, and essentially it's also a way of reducing inflation. In fact, like Bitcoin is deflationary in nature, right? Where the supply of Bitcoin actually reduces every 4 years, and that's probably something we're going to talk about because then we're going to start getting into a lot of heavy tech. I want to basically spend the whole call today without saying any big keywords that I used. Right,
Okay.
because I can just be sitting here saying decentralized ledger, and the thing is, I've realized that people actually don't understand these keywords. That's why they're so alienated. So I'm going to try to
Right.
stay away from all of those words. So I don't want to get into halving, but essentially what happens is that every 4 years the supply of Bitcoin halves, which is actually very different from currencies because currencies get printed more and more over time.
Yeah.
Right. And essentially, what happens when you print currency more and more over time is that it loses its value. So, from the time US dollar became a fiat currency, that means it was no longer backed by gold, because I think all of us know that currencies used to be backed by gold. It has lost 99% of its value against gold, right? It's
Wow.
just a piece of paper, and the American government just prints more of it whenever they need to, right? They give it a fancy word, and I'm often very critical of the American government, but most governments do this. Like call it quantitative easing, right? So they give it a term which sounds fancy, so people can't understand it, but really what quantitative easing means, like printing more money, right?
Right.
So that is why it's important for money to be decentralized. Now, obviously, there are other things as well. Decentralized money means that nobody gets a control over your money, right? That leads to illicit actions, but that's actually an active solution to many things. For example, cross-border payments. We live in a very globalized world today. Their borders are almost non-existent in most cases. In Europe, like literally non-existent, and in the rest of the world, like Southeast Asia, relatively easy to do business cross borders and get around. But what's very hard is if I ask you to pull your phone out right now and send money to Singapore,
Yeah.
right? Will probably require you to step into a bank, at least, fill out some kind of form. But with crypto, if you had a Bitcoin wallet right now, you could send money anywhere in the world with a click of a button, and it will take all of like 15 minutes to get there, but at best. It could be less, right?
Mm.
So literally, it's a use case for it, which is like right there is cross-border payments, right? That exists.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there's a lot more other use cases of cryptocurrencies that has now come to the fore, especially during this bull run, 2020. But I'll get into that because those again we start getting a little bit complex, right? So let's just quickly recap, right? Just let's say you ask me a question, what Bitcoin is. So Bitcoin is basically a specific kind of database. A database typically is something that stores information. Blockchain stores data in blocks that are chained together, hence why it's called a blockchain,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And Bitcoin is actually one of the used cases of blockchain. There are a lot of other use cases of blockchain, but one of the use cases of blockchain is currency, and that is Bitcoin.
Right.
Now, one of the other, actually, now I'm doing this in retake, but takeaway, one of the other, for example, big uses of Bitcoin is smart contracts, which is the second largest cryptocurrency in the world, Ethereum, right? And so smart contracts is later. So just like that, Bitcoin, smart contracts, blah, 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 many users of blockchain, Bitcoin is just one of them.
All right. Okay.
Was that helpful for someone like you who's new
Yes,
to this
that was
industry to
amazing.
understand?
Yes, that was amazing. And but what really
Yeah.
got me curious is like with blockchain tech, then we can have like a globalized, medical records of everybody, that especially people who travel, like that's going to be so interesting, and that's going to be so important, is there
Yeah, you're
something?
right. I mean, you're absolutely right. Like as I mentioned, it is a database, right? And what's interesting about like what you just said about medical records. So a country that does this, and they don't quite use a blockchain technology, but they use something like a blockchain technology in Estonia, where all of the information of a person, their medical record, criminal record, blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah, is
Yeah.
actually stored in a database that their government has, much like a blockchain database, and everyone has their own ID,
Right.
blockchain ID, like you would. And when you go to a hospital, the medical staff can check your medical record, but they can't check your criminal record. When you go to a police station, they can check your criminal record, but not your medical record. So all of this, but the thing is that at the same time, the Estonian system that they have over there is very centralized to the government. But this is essentially something that can be built in a decentralized way. Like, one of the eventual outcomes that I think that's going to happen from the crypto world is actually two things. And one of them is too far-fetched, and these are my personal beliefs, by the way. Disclaimer there. One is universal basic income. This is not my personal belief. There's a lot of people believe that cryptocurrency will lead to universal basic income in some way,
Yeah.
right? And for all of you who don't know what universal basic income is, just Google it. UBI. It's a concept which basically says that everyone in this world should have some kind of basic income. If we eventually hit singularity and bots and AIs are going to do most of our work, we will need something like this anyway, right? Like a universal basic income, because we're not going to have enough jobs to go around. But the second one is actually, I believe, self-governance is something which is going to be very possible, because I'm going to be very honest, right? I'm like an anarchist, right? One of the reasons why crypto excites me so much is because I believe that finance should not belong to governments or banks, right? Just like that, I believe that maybe like 1,000 years ago, we needed a government, a king, or a ruler to rule all of us, because 90% of population back then you didn't weren't even educated. They didn't even go to schools. There were no such thing as schools. The world's first university was Oxford, which came up what, like 12 1300 AD or whatever it was, right? 1600, I think it was, that it came up in. But before that, not the general public never got educated, right? And that maybe that's why we need a central leader. But I believe that in 2021 we can all actually self-govern ourselves, right? Like we can vote on issues, like I want that road fixed, and everyone who live in my area over here can actually vote on a blockchain. So the vote is obviously conducted fairly, because it's, as I said, decentralized, not controlled by anyone. Nobody can manipulate with that vote. And then we ourselves can actually put money into that platform, so nobody's stealing that money, right? So you're taking the middleman, like the management, out of it, and we go and fix that problem ourselves, right? So, and that's I'm giving you a problem on like a very minute level, like that's a council problem. My road is broken. This could even apply for bigger problems, like, hey, should we go to war with Iraq? Let's have the whole country vote on that, right?
Right.
Like, and you can have an answer within like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, depending on how long you want to leave the voting on, right? So self-governance is the second thing that like broadly can be achieved in the long run.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So essentially, we already have a way to do, like, elections, like online, like with blockchain tech, and it's unmanipulate. Like, you can't really manipulate it.
Look, man, the thing is, what your mind, if you go Google and go down some rabbit holes of how elections would work on blockchain, essentially there is a framework, right? Because let me tell you, right, Bitcoin is already about elections, right? Like, because what happens is, right, Bitcoin is a decentralized currency. So like, imagine if we want to make a change to Bitcoin, right? Like last time, for example, in 2017,
Right.
Bitcoin was a bit too slow, right? As a result, I'm not going to get into tech details, but as a result, the Bitcoin community decided that we are going to make an enhancement to the blockchain, and they call it the segregated witness. But imagine, like, if you want to make a change like this to Bitcoin, right? You need everyone to get, because it's decentralized. Who makes that call whether we should do segregated witness or not, right?
Yeah.
Essentially, what they did was they did like an election. They voted within the community of coders, at least, whether it's something that should go ahead or not go ahead, right?
Right.
And that framework of how an election should work on crypto is actually what one of the reasons why blockchain was created. A unmanipulated election and stuff like that. The thing is, we are ready for it, but I think very obvious reasons why countries are not already doing it, right? Because manipulation into elections is basically, I think, the core of any election anywhere in the world, right? Like
Yeah.
it's something that like has been proven to happen even in the United States, right? Let's not even talk about some of these smaller countries, or closer to home or whatever, right? But um, it's something that has been happening, and it's actually almost scary how fair elections are on the blockchain, because they can't be manipulated with. You will get like an email on your phone which you will answer to A, B, Y, C, or D, or maybe through an app you will answer A, B, C, or D, and your answer will be like cryptographically uh, imprinted onto the blockchain like a block, and
Yeah.
a lot of blocks will then make a chain in that case,
Right.
and those blocks cannot be manipulated with, so nobody can change them, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, that's that. Elections, fair elections, is definitely one of the outcomes.
All right. Okay.
Mhm.
So, in the sense of blockchain, is there anything else you want to expand on? Because I think the next one we will be diving deeper into cryptocurrencies, the various sorts of cryptocurrencies, and how people go about investing in them. Is there anything else about blockchain tech in general that you would want to expand on?
No, I mean, and I think, I mean, like, for anyone who's watching this, I think the best way to, like, I've given you guys a very, very, I think I would say pretty much on purpose, a very brief description of it, because if I start throwing keywords at people right now, like, I know everyone will be lost. So honestly, I always feel that the best way to actually learn about it is just go on Google. And as you like to say, like, just go down rabbit holes, just like read stuff, you will figure it out eventually. Like, that's what blockchain essentially is. But yeah, let's get into the next bit of it.
All right, Ume. Thanks for sharing with us. Now we'll get into the second part, which is more into cryptocurrency.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the main question, right? And so just now we talked about blockchain, right? And as I keep on emphasizing, so there's blockchain technology, and cryptocurrency is actually one of the usages of the blockchain technology, right? But what I find personally is that the word cryptocurrencies in itself is a bit misleading, right? Because when you say the word cryptocurrency, people think that it's a currency. And when people, what your idea of currency today is what is in your pocket and you being able to buy milk with it or beer with it, and that in itself in a sense is what currency means to you today,
Yeah.
right? That's not always what currency had meant, because at one point, like in our throughout our human history, currency was gold, right? Like, and gold was not essentially
Right.
something that you just I also used for spending on things, but it was also something you accumulated because you knew that like having a lot of it has a lot of value. And then of course there were other use cases of gold, such as jewelry and stuff like that. But essentially why jewelry became a used case of gold is because people understood how important it is to store your value. Like gold essentially became a store of value, right? And jewelry was another way of like storing that value, right? So
Okay.
coming back to the question, when will cryptocurrencies become into retail? It's a very tough question to answer, right? Like that, when will you be able to go to your 7-Eleven and buy that with Bitcoin? I would say probably today you're closer to it than we have ever been before. But the point that I'm trying to make is that like retail usage of crypto is one thing and adoption is another thing. Where we stand today, let's look at the number today, right? Where we stand today in terms of adoption. And I like to use the cryptocurrency market cap as an main indicator of how big the adoption is. And the way you can find the cryptocurrency market cap is on coinmarketcap.com. And currently we are standing at about 1.6 trillion US dollars, right?
Okay.
Now, to put this into perspective, when the bull run happened in 2017, the highest we hit was about 800 billion. And for the most large part of the last 3 years, we have been under $300 billion, right? Today, we are at 1.6 trillion. Now, to put this into even more perspective, the total market cap of gold in the world is $7 trillion, and the total market cap of US dollars is $70 trillion right now. So as you can see, cryptocurrencies are still very, very small compared to them, and they're small because they're new. And obviously, the trend is that that market cap is growing. And what I mean by adoption is that today you might not be, for example, able to go into your shop and buy something with it, but there are other massive users of cryptocurrencies, right? So like for example, one big use that is really blown up, like I'm bringing this up first, there are many, but I'm bringing this up first because it's been one of the main driver behind the current bull run in the market, which took Bitcoin over 50K, is DeFi, right? DeFi essentially stands for decentralized finance. And
Yeah.
what decentralized finance is that it connects people who are willing to borrow money or lend money in a very decentralized manner, where essentially who does that today is a bank, right? They use your deposits to give out loans and make money from that. But essentially, what a DeFi platform would typically do is connect people who have the money to keep people who want the money, and that loan, and without getting into dynamics of how that works too much, is now possible in a decentralized way. Now, DeFi obviously allows for you to earn a lot of things. It allows for you to like do a lot of other things which would typically banks would do today. Like for example, DeFi is a very active way of how you do wealth management with a bank, right? You have a lot of money, million, 2 million bucks, you put it in a wealth account, they go and invest it on a plethora of stuff and make you more money. But like for example, Binance today, the exchange that I actively trade on, they have a DeFi product where you can take your Bitcoin, which is just sitting there doing nothing for you, give it to them. They use it to market make on their exchange, and basically pay you a return on it. And the returns for that are pretty much, some of them are as high as 30% per annum, which is like way more attractive than leaving it in a fixed deposit, right? So essentially, one of the biggest usages of cryptocurrencies today is already decentralized finance. That's happening today, providing banking solutions in a P2P manner is would be the best way to explain DeFi. Another one big one that is more consistent with this bull market, that has gotten big during this bull market, is NFTs. NFT, the word essentially stands for non fungible tokens. Non fungible tokens. How do I explain this to you? The fungibility of a token. What would be the best way to explain this? So, like, imagine Bitcoin, right? There's 21 million Bitcoin in the world. Each Bitcoin is not really that different from another Bitcoin. So, Bitcoin is essentially fungible, right? Something which is non-fungible is that they are similar in a sense, but each one of them is still different from each other in a way. And essentially, the best way to explain non-fungible token would be digital art, the thing that there's big usages for this kind of technologies, digital art. A lot of artists have been digitally selling their art using this technology, where basically they can put their digital art up on the web. People bid for it, and then they can cryptographically pay for this art and in exchange become the owner of this piece of art on the blockchain. So it's essentially a ledger of ownership of all the art that exists in the digital world. One of the big things that this NFT technology is also taking over is the memorabilia, the sports memorabilia industry. For example, NBA has now come up with their own NFT platform. It's called the NBA Top Shots, where you can actually buy moments from the NBA, and cryptographically you'll be the owner of that moment on the blockchain. So fans are now beginning to buy moments on that. Huge money going behind these things, right? Like some of the moments on NBA Top Shot are like $200,000-300,000, right? Like from famous basketball players. And then the NFT art that I was like telling you about, um, like sold for 69 million. This artist called Beeple sold one of his digital artwork for $69 million a couple of days ago. And then it could be more or less anything which is digital and has value, right? So like Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, recently sold his first tweet as an NFT, right? The point that, again, like going back to your question, is blockchain or cryptocurrencies are slowly getting adopted into our usage. Retail usage is probably going to be the last leg of that, right? Early adoption, as we can see, is happening in other industries, like other areas of finance, digital ownership of art. Another big thing is, I think we know, like a lot of the staying with the NFTs, a lot of big clubs in Europe, football clubs in Europe, are fan owned, like Barcelona, like Atletico Madrid, and AC Milan. A lot of these clubs have tokenized the fan ownership of their club. Like, for example, AC Milan token is now listed on Binance, right? You can go become a part owner of AC Milan, and you get to vote in club decisions, like which players you should buy and which players you shouldn't buy and stuff like that. Pretty cool stuff, right? Like, and in the past, while it might have only been possible for Spanish fans to become owners of Barcelona or Atletico Madrid, now fans globally can actually get in on the action, right? So NFTs is a big area within cryptocurrencies. And then, of course, there's others. Like, for example, to me, one of the biggest usages is of the crypto world is that there's tethers. There's, for example, a US tether, which is a cryptocurrency which is backed one to not backed, which is basically $1 is one USDT, right? And it's called a stable coin. And there are many stable coins like this. There's DAI, there's BUSD. And if you look at, like, I'm looking at Tether right now, and the market cap of Tether is 40 billion US dollars. Of the 1.6 trillion, $40 billion are in Tether, and probably just like that into other cryptocurrencies. And this is a way of not being part. That means if you're in something like Tether or DAI or BUSD, your money is not part of the financial system, which is a big thing, which is a big requirement for most people. But it is in the crypto world, but it is not unstable against Bitcoin, right? Like, you're holding your money in US Tether on Binance. You're not part of the financial system. You're not part of Bitcoin, but your money is in a cryptographic form, if you will, on some sort of blockchain. So that, to me, essentially is a usage as well, because a lot of the retail sales that do end up happening online using cryptocurrencies actually use either Bitcoin or one of these tethers. And then, look, man, there's many other usages that are there. I got into NFT and DeFi specifically today because they are the ones which are more relevant to today, this bull run. But, like, for example, 2017 bull run, the theme was something completely different. But the blockchain industry gave us one of the easiest ways of raising money for a startup, right? Called an ICO, right? So basically, what you can do is that instead of going and trying to raise money from your family or friends, or if you're already an established company, then doing an IPO, is that you can actually launch tokens, sell them to the general public. Whoever's willing to pay for it because they see value in your service will pay you for it, and that's how you actually raise money in a decentralized way. And basically, the regulation around ICOs around the world does exist, but it's loose, relatively compared to raising money via some of the other methods that's out there. So that's definitely one of the big use cases of crypto out there already. And with this, slowly we will see retail usage as well. Like, we saw during this bull run companies like Tesla and Apple, and Apple is just a rumor, but Tesla and a lot of big companies buy Bitcoin. Yesterday, Elon Musk announced that you can now buy Tesla with Bitcoin, right? And they're basically running their node directly, which also means that Tesla is not going to convert any of that money back into US dollars. They're going to keep it in Bitcoin, and they're going to have a Bitcoin liquidity and basically Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? So big companies, Tesla is obviously someone who's very technologically inclined, and are basically a step ahead the rest in terms of innovation as well. So they have taken that step. Slowly, other companies will start taking it too. And I think today in 2021, retail is actually very easy to implement today, because I think that we definitely main reason why retailers haven't been using cryptocurrencies is because there weren't enough users, right? Or even there's even a company in Malaysia called Crypto Bilis that actually allows you to set up a terminal at your shop to accept Bitcoin, right? A lot of companies who ended up doing it realized that probably one customer in a month uses it, right?
Right.
So the thing is that on a grand scale, there's a lot of adoption, right? That's the word I like to use. In retail, the adoption is less, because guess what? Everyone who has got into cryptocurrency today is still an early adopter. We are all early adopters still, right? I
Yeah.
talked about the market cap. It's 1.6 trillion. US dollars is 70 trillion. We have a long way to go. I believe we will get there one day, but we have a long way to go. And so we're still early adopters. And I think retail will be the last box that clicks off. Like, basically, if you're adopting Bitcoin when Bitcoin is being used to retail, you are not an early adopter anymore.
Right.
Is
What about
probably the
like for
best way
like
to put it.
online purchasing? Not just necessarily retail, but like online purchasing, e-wallets. So
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, I think online, I'm beginning to see a lot of sites which allow um, you to use Bitcoin a lot, right? And essentially, what happens is that tech advancement, especially things like decentralized tech, always hits the loosely regulated industries first, right? So, like, if you talk about VCRs, back when VCRs came in, or back even when CD-ROMs came with, the first mass usage of VCRs was porn,
okay.
right? Um, Today, if you look at who's allowing you to buy and sell via crypto, it's a lot of the gambling sites, the loosely regulated gambling site, a lot of porn sites and stuff like that. The legit businesses are still struggling to comprehend this idea, and they're wondering, like, hey, what kind of backlash could I possibly face from my government if I use this and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, Essentially, I already see, like, a lot of big companies are now moving away from that stigma, like Tesla. Like, imagine, right, like, from going from something that a lot of people were like, oh, this is only for porn and money lending, to, like, now Tesla saying that you can buy Teslas with it, right? So I think that I do think that there's a lot of low hanging fruits in terms of crypto retail, which are going to get hit very, very fast, right? Like, there's a lot of companies which are actually offering merchant acceptance for crypto, right? So I think that crypto merchant acceptance is very different from merchant. Like, if you are a Grab or Razer or whatever, Boost or something like that, you probably will have relationship managers who are running around and asking shops to accept their wallet. Crypto is very different. There's nobody that works for the Bitcoin organization that is going to go. Bitcoin is not essentially an organization, right? So nobody's going to go around telling people, hey, you should accept Bitcoin. It's just going to come from, like, the shop owner himself going, like, shit, I need to now accept Bitcoin.
Mm.
But as I keep on saying, like, my belief is that by the time Bitcoin is being used for retail, we won't be early adopters anymore. Nobody at that point will be early adopters. Early adoption is happening now, right? In terms of like decentralized finance, NFTs, crypto art. Honestly, a lot of these people who are buying up like these NFTs right now, I think are going to be like multimillionaires just from these in a few years times, right? If things go as to plan, like, and then we can't even like imagine where Bitcoin would be, right? Like, I mean, the general trajectory that Bitcoin has taken is upward, right? Which is very obvious, right? So I'm not going to speculate on price, but I do believe that that's the general 4-year, 10-year trajectory that Bitcoin is going to continue to take for at least now, right? So yeah, I mean, that's essentially my short answer for that. Is that, but just to sum that answer up, is that you shouldn't be that question gets asked a lot, but you shouldn't be looking at Bitcoin and, oh, when can I pay for things in it? You should be looking at, and that's where the word cryptocurrencies is a bit misleading. You should be looking at what is Bitcoin getting adopted for today and what is it being used for. And the answer to that is many things, which I explain, fundraising, decentralized finance, NFTs, and the list goes on. Those are just three, given the time that we have. But many other usages. Perhaps we can have another session just on the usages of cryptocurrencies, and I'll do like 10 different usages, and yeah, that's essentially that.
Right. Very,
Mm-hmm.
very interesting way.
Mm.
Uh, Mind blowing, actually. So I had the perception that cryptocurrencies were going to invalidate normal currency that we use in our day to day, but it seems like that's not the case. They will simultaneously exist in the same space, it's just at like for different functions, different purposes. As I gather from what you have said, like it doesn't mean that one's gonna invalidate the other. It really shows that there's so many aspects in this digital space, that exists outside of the normal, like,
Yeah.
so to speak, like the retail or whatever, normal ecosystem that we face in our local environment. Um, and I think that's where
Look,
the gap.
the only thing I'll add about that is like how the game tree of what happens from here ends up, right? Is very, very. There's so many things that can branch out and happen from here, which are
Yeah,
going to impact the adoption of cryptocurrencies. But one thing is for sure, right? Is that what we have been brought up with is, especially if you live in the free world, so called, right? Like when I say free world, we're talking about US, Europe, and stuff like that, rather than Russia, for example. Like I think Malaysia is a country which is very, very, the political thinking over here, even though we call ourselves socialists, is consistent more with the free world. And what you get taught in schools is essentially the idea of money that we have developed is very consistent with the Keynesian school of economics, right? And the thing is that there are other school of economics which also argue that, hey, you know what, money doesn't actually need to be stable in order for it to be money, right? One of the biggest arguments against Bitcoin is that like it can never be money because it's not stable. But the flip argument to that is by other school of thoughts of economists saying that like, hey, guess what, money doesn't actually need to be stable, right? Like, because once money is unstable, like let's take Bitcoin, for example, right? Just by holding Bitcoin every 4 year, Bitcoin takes such an exponential jump that somebody like me who has Bitcoin, like I would rather hold off my spend. Right? I would only spend on the things which I really need to. Right. So one of the arguments is that, like, hey, if you just by holding your money, you become richer, money goes into its most efficient use, right?
right.
At any one point, right? That's probably one of the arguments against for sorry a instable currency amongst others, right? So yeah, I mean, essentially what just the thing that I wanted to add is that it's too close how we look at money right now. It's too ingrained, engineered into our head, and we can't even, for example, imagine when people use gold, right? Like that was before us. That was 1970s, 60s, and pre, right? We only, our idea of money is only what we saw since we were born, which is fiat currency, essentially, right? Like a lot of people don't know this term fiat, but the form of money that we use today, which is actually issued by a central bank and doesn't actually have anything backing it, it's called fiat money. That's our view of money.
Right.
It's very hard, but imagine somebody who was born before 1970, his view of money was very different, right?
Yeah.
So I think what's going to happen is that the generations to come, like my view of money is already changing. And I think that generations to come, that view will actually get ingrained. And it's just the point that you hit on, that for the time being, at least I think our generation and maybe the next generation, there's no chance that regular money is going to be replaced by crypto. Almost no chance, right? And you see, this is just first part of the battle, right? The more Bitcoin get accepted, the more big current countries are going to oppose it, right?
Yeah.
Like I think the best example of this is India. India, like 3 or 4 days ago, completely outlawed Bitcoin. Like in any form, you can't even hold it.
Right.
Holding Bitcoin is even illegal in America, because they realized how, you see, India is one of the places which is like the cradle of like development in the crypto world, right? A lot of tech talent resides in India, and a lot of innovation development is happening in India. And naturally, so the current Indian government, given how they are now, I want to talk about politics, are worried that this is something that can impact their position in the country, like makes them less powerful, if anything, right? So like that we haven't even hit the first wave of the resistance that's going to come in,
Right.
from the government. So I think we're a long way to have a system where it's going to be just crypto. It's going to be dual. But then, you know what, there's some countries who are taking it to the next level by having their own digital currency. And the best example of this is China. China has the digital yuan, which is a cryptographic currency, of yuan, right? So, but yeah, just very simply, it's going to take a while before just money goes out of existence as we know it, and then it's just a crypto world. But that'll be something.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
for now, a layman who wants to know more about expanding his knowledge in, well, cryptocurrency and how to go about like simple trading or investing, where would you recommend that they get this knowledge from?
Look, so I think just to answer that question, I'll briefly tell you what crypto is and what crypto is not, right? So like what crypto is something we've talked about today, and like in our last discussion about what blockchain is, and why you should really be getting into this technology is understanding why it is important that Bitcoin exists, from a political point of view, from an economic point of view, and from many different point of view, and try to see if that is consistent with the way of you think about things, right? Like a lot of people, so what Bitcoin is not, is that it's not a get rich quick scheme,
Yeah.
right? Like a lot of people are just like, the questions that I try to avoid from people is like, hey, if I have 10,000 ringgit now, what should I put it into, right? Or if I have 10,000 ringgit, how can I turn it into 100,000 ringgit? Are exactly not the way to look at Bitcoin, right? Because it's not a get rich quick scheme. Now, the best example of that is like, look, in 2017, when Bitcoin went to like 19K, a lot of people invested in Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin went back down to 3K, and people were like 70-80% down. And a lot of people at that time were just like, people who didn't really believe in the tech in the first place and were in it for the speculative nature of it. When it went down to 3K, they were like, fuck it, I've lost everything. And they just sold everything. And like, look at today, Bitcoin sitting pretty at 50, 60K. Now they probably feel stupid for selling it at 3K. But then I know the second group of people who bought it at 19K, Bitcoin went down to 3K. But because they were net long on the technology and they believe where it came from, these are some people. In fact, what one of the friends that I know who did it was, he bought it at 20K. He bought a Bitcoin. Bitcoin went down to 3K. And the way he was looking at it, he's like, shit, now I can buy 5 Bitcoin for the same price. So
Right.
the point is, if he fancied Bitcoin at 20K, he really fancied it at 3K, right?
Right.
What I'm trying to basically get it at is like, try to read. I mean, everything about it is available on Google. What is Bitcoin is a very simple thing to type into Google. And why is Bitcoin important economically is another thing you can type. Why should money not be stable is another thing you can type. Like all the concepts that I've talked about, Bitcoin and government is another thing you can type, and you'll see like all of stuff. And you will begin to read why Bitcoin is being banned by governments. What is the response that happens? You eventually, like, there's a very famous saying, right? You don't ban Bitcoin. You just ban yourself off the Bitcoin network, because guess what? Bitcoin is impossible to ban. If you have an internet connection anywhere in the world, you can somehow transact Bitcoin. So if the government says it's illegal, I can still do it on my network, on my internet, and they can't find out about it. So Bitcoin basically saying Bitcoin is illegal is useless. Bitcoin was illegal in Malaysia for the last 9 years until last year, right? But I've been in it. I've done all kinds of transactions and investments, and no one in the Malaysian government has been essentially able to stop me. And today they have embraced that this is something that they can't stop, and as a result have legalized it. Right. So you can't ban Bitcoin, you only ban yourself off the Bitcoin network, is a thing that gets said a lot. So basically, coming back to it, read about it, see what this whole thing is about, why money needs to be decentralized, what does decentralization mean, why do we need decentralization? Because when you don't have decentralization and a single government ends up getting too much power, for example, like I think the example that always gets thrown is the US government, then you see what happens. The output of that and the outcome of that is, as the guardians of the world, probably results in too many wars, probably results in too much dominance in world matters, in matters relating to green change. Like one of the biggest reasons why like we couldn't make any advancements in like green talks over the last 8 years is because Trump didn't want to have anything to do with it. Right. So that's a problem when a country gets too small. So read about all of this stuff, and then you will begin to realize why Bitcoin is important. Once you find why Bitcoin is important, and you're not only in it to make a quick gain, then like riding the waves would not be the most an ideal thing for you to do. You will just buy Bitcoin, accumulate it. Like one of the ways I tell people, and this is not investment advice, again, this is what just like one of the ways of getting into Bitcoin is, you just take a sum of money every month, which basically probably shouldn't mean too much to you, right? Like whatever is completely disposable to you as an income, you take that sum and you put it into Bitcoin. Let's say it's like 100 ringgit. Then over next 12 months, it won't even matter what the price of Bitcoin is, because over the next 12 months, you would have essentially averaged out your entry into Bitcoin. Do you get what I mean? If you put in 100 ringgit over the next 12 months, the price of Bitcoin doesn't even matter, because your price of Bitcoin is average of the next 12 months, right? So it's one of the ways to get into Bitcoin. Now, how to do it is, like, there's many ways. I mean, like in Malaysia, there's a lot of exchanges which are regulated, which where you can actually put your ringgits in and get Bitcoin for it. Luno, Synergy, and Tokenize are three of the regulated Malaysian exchanges, which let you buy Bitcoin. Then the other ways of buying Bitcoin is P2P. That means like there's somebody that you just send your money to, they will send you Bitcoin. And how this transaction is monitored is through an escrow. That means like when you're sending them money, their Bitcoin gets held in escrow. And then once you have sent the money to them, you will get the Bitcoin from them. Very, very secure. Two of the best P2P platforms that are accessible in Malaysia is Remitano.com and Binance.com, right? And look, that's a way of getting into Bitcoin.
Right.
If you're not a trader, I wouldn't advise you to trade, right? Like Bitcoin and trading is closely connected, because the crypto industry is new, and like pretty much over the last 5-6 years, the only way of buying Bitcoin was through exchanges. But that's where it should stop for you if you're not a trader. I wouldn't recommend for someone who is not a trader to then go on Binance and trade Bitcoin, right? Because that's a very easy way of losing money. But hey, you know what? You set up a crypto account and you now have a bit of Bitcoin, and you're looking to make some side income, and you're like, hey, I want to trade. Then, what I would recommend is that you do a course in it. You learn about it, and don't rely on somebody or YouTube ad where somebody's coming up to you and telling you how they made millions of dollars from trading and they can do it for you, because oftentimes those are scams, right? There's so much free information about trading available I have learned 90% of what I know about trading I know 90% of what I know about trading just because I was really curious and I just learned about it on the internet. And then like the remaining 10%, I did courses and met like people who are better than me. I'm in a lot of groups with people who are better than me. We talk about our strategies and stuff like that. But that's how I learned. I was really interested in it. But where it should start for you in crypto is just be net long on it. Just have some of it, keep it, talk to your financial advisor and see if it's the best thing for you to do. Because at the end of the day, and this is changing, and this disclaimer I feel is probably going to go away in a few years, but it still exists, is that cryptos are highly volatile, right? You can lose 80% of what you put into it. So, you shouldn't be going into credit card debts or taking loans from junkets to buy Bitcoin. It's definitely a very, very unhealthy way of getting into it. you know. And what I can pretty much say with for sure, because I have now gone through two bull run cycles, right? Being in this market, 2017, 2020, is that look, man, we are such early adopters that over long period of time, it will go up. Like this trick that I'm telling you of taking a small sum, almost think of it as a piggy bank, but your piggy bank money you're putting into Bitcoin. One day you're going to wake up and that piggy bank is going to be worth a lot. Like this bull run in 2021, there were cryptocurrencies that I bought in 2017 that I had just written off. I thought like, I'm not getting a cent back from it because they were 99% down. Like I bought something, I put 10,000 ringgit into it, and now it's currently worth like 100 ringgit. What's the point of even selling it? The fees that are involved in selling it would have basically liquidated me, like I wouldn't have got anything back. But today those same investments are sitting at like, way more than what I invested in it for 5, 10x, 20x, some of them. Right. So that's like literally, there's another thing that we say in like crypto, like diamond hands rocket. You gotta have diamond hands. Like if you are getting in for the tech, right, and you believe in this tech and you think that this is something that is going where I believe it's going, then there's almost no point in you selling it. Right. Like I don't really sell crypto. I make money from trading crypto, but I don't really like sell things like until I believe that, hey, look, this was my exit target anyway. Right. Like I have targets, like just like you should with any investment you get into, you have an exit plan. And once my exit plan is activated, I do exit. But it's like, generally on things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that, you're getting in it for the tech. You're getting in it because you're an early adopter. That shouldn't be thinking of buying and selling. Like I've just been really like frustrated with some of my friends who I personally help, right? Every day, like, they're putting in like 1,000 ringgit. They're like, hey, dude, my 1,000 ringgit is now up to 1,003. So should I sell it? I'm like, I mean, if you got into crypto for making 300 ringgit, then sure, la, sell it. But that's not what you're in it for. You want to be part of this crypto revolution. You want to be one of those adopters for whenever Bitcoin becomes whatever it does become. You want to be one of those adopters, man. Like, look, somebody like me, I could have never imagined that Bitcoin's going to be 60K. So today, somebody who is getting in today, I'm pretty sure that 10 years time, right, they're going to be saying like, shit, man, I could have never imagined that Bitcoin's going to be $1 million, or something along those lines. I'm not saying Bitcoin's going to go to $1 million, but whatever it is,
Yeah.
This is a tech that I think is in early stages of its development, and there's pretty much no ceiling to where the price of Bitcoin can go, right? Or price of the general market cap of crypto. I shouldn't say price, but where the market cap of crypto can go. Like today, we like to think about it like 1.6 trillion, and we always say 70 trillion is US dollar. We compare it to 70% trillion US dollar. But what if it becomes 2 times of US dollars at some point? Yeah, guess what, man? Like today, 50% of people in the world are unbanked. 50% of people in this world don't even have access to bank accounts,
Yeah.
right? But even in countries where people are unbanked, like you look at Bangladesh, Uganda, Botswana, one of the things you will see is that the smartphone penetration is always higher than the population of number of people that are banked in any country. Talk about India, Bangladesh, any third world or developing nation. Smartphone penetration is higher than the banking penetration, right? So there, it's like a low hanging fruit there already. Like adoption into crypto is happening in those unbanked countries. So yeah, going back to US dollars, it could like exceed that, right? So yeah, I mean that's essentially what I would say to people who are looking to buy Bitcoin, unless you're a trader, right? If you're a trader, you're probably not watching this because you know what to do already by now, right? People who are going to watch us talking about this are people who are thinking like, hey, should I get into Bitcoin? And if you're somebody like that, you're not a trader. First of all, the only reason you're getting into this industry is because you have heard this word Bitcoin a lot and you want to know what it's all about. And basically, I'm here to tell you that it's not all about making money. Bitcoin is not a get rich quick scheme. Bitcoin is a technology. By buying it, you're betting on that technology, right? You're betting that this technology is going to be huge in a few years, right? I bet
Right.
on this fact that this technology is going to be huge 3 years ago. One of the big things I bet on, for example, that when I was working in banking, I saw that international trade within banking, like I used to do corporate banking and stuff like that, is very, very inconsistent. And despite the fact that our
clients or customers sometimes used to have the right collateral, but we can't give them the loan. So they don't have enough money. You think about a lot of manufacturers and stuff like that. The more money they get on their small margin, the more they can produce, the more net profit make, right? But the banks can't give them that funding. And I essentially bet that cryptocurrency is going to be a solution
To that. Now, today in 2021, you see all these banks scrambling like DBS and Morgan Stanley to have their own cryptocurrency desks and incorporate Bitcoin into cryptocurrencies into their trade is because all these banks have realized today that, hey, guess what? Bitcoin is a great way of doing international trade and international payments. And the other bet that I made was what DeFi is today, borrowing and lending in a P2P manner, right? So I bet like 3 years ago that Bitcoin is going to be big, and that's where I am today with crypto, or whatever success I've got is because of that bet. Today, people can make that bet that, hey, in 10 years time, I think Bitcoin is going to be used for retail, because I think the day Bitcoin starts getting used for retail, where like walk into every bar and you see like their Maybank QR, their Grab QR, and then their Bitcoin QR. That's like the end game already. But if you are buying Bitcoin at that time, you're not really buying it. You're basically just exchanging it. If you know what I mean. If you can gather the difference between the two, you're now just a user of Bitcoin. You're not a adopter or investor in Bitcoin. Like, at that point when it's being used for retail, you can't just say like, oh, this guy's a Bitcoin investor. Like it's just a user of Bitcoin. So yeah, that's the way you should be thinking about getting into cryptocurrency. Definitely, if you want to make like 300 quick bucks or something, you might as well gamble. Honestly, given the fact that Bitcoin's 50K, if you're looking to make a quick buck in Bitcoin now, it's pretty much as good as gambling. Because I think, for example, personally believe there might even be some correction. Bitcoin might even go down from here. I can't say that for sure, and I don't want to give financial advice to people. But right now, if you're trying to get into make a quick buck, it's pretty much as good as gambling. You know.
All right, all right, all right. So here's my
Mm-hmm.
question. Forgive me because my
Mm-hmm.
perspective on like the currency, cryptocurrency, and how it works is very much aligned with how I perceive like foreign exchange currency and stuff. So this is where my question's coming from, right? Um, Bitcoin being the biggest one, right? And everyone having a piece of Bitcoin. In fact, when I was doing some research, like in order to buy like some of the other coins, you need Bitcoin as the main facilitator, or the currency that you do that buying and selling with. So my question is, does something like Ripple, Ethereum, Litecoin, like do any of these coins, or probably one that emerges later on, have a more stable, less fluctuative way of doing things, and that will become the Bitcoin of the future? And then, is there a chance of something like that, or am I totally off base here?
Um, I mean, the question is fair. About like it being stable, and if which is going to become something to get used, right? But this is going back to pretty much two things I said over here, right? Like the idea of stable currency is kind of engineered to your head, right? So you keep on going back, or a lot of people keep on going back to like, but you know what, I need something which is more consistent around the world and more stable, and that should be used, because what if the price of things goes up and down every day? Like, what's going to happen? So that, I think that there's a lot of school of thoughts that are going to come into it. But the thing is that actually stable coins exist today. There are coins which are $1 for one USDT, $1 for one BUSD, $1 for one DAI. So there's like these three big stable coins which are $1, $1 is one coin. So if you want to transact like $10,000 US dollars worth of value, you can transact 10,000 BUSD, and these are pretty much readily available. Any exchange in the world will sell you USDT at least, and
Yeah,
then DAI is the second one.
I get that, but that's not in direct relation to actually Bitcoin. So Bitcoin as an entity by itself that everyone's going crazy about, everyone's using it as the main form of trading. So Bitcoin is now the main guy in the picture. You know what I mean? And is there a reason for that? Is it behind the tech, or why is it?
Okay, the reason for it is, yeah, so Bitcoin is the largest guy in the world, right? And as I said, like the 1.6 trillion market cap that exists, I think let's look at the more accurate number today. Bitcoin typically has 40% of that market cap at any one point, right? So if I look at today, the market cap of Bitcoin is 982 billion, so almost $1 trillion. And currently, Bitcoin is 60% of the total market. So the 1.6 trillion market cap, 60% of that Bitcoin. Why is very simple, because Bitcoin was the first one that came into the market. Bitcoin is basically the invention of the blockchain technology. Even though at the last call I said that there's blockchain technology and Bitcoin is one of the usage for it, the fact is that blockchain technology was invented by the Bitcoin was the invention of the blockchain technology. So that's the reason why Bitcoin is up there. Whether it can be displaced from there, yes, absolutely it can be, right? Right now there's a lot of problems that exist with Bitcoin, for example, is not very environmentally friendly to produce. Like Bitcoin mining, the process which leads to production of Bitcoin, which is we can talk about another call, like it's a long topic, but is actually not a very environmentally friendly process. And after all, even if a transaction on Bitcoin takes like 10 minutes, that's actually kind of long, right? Because you can do transactions with your bank account in like seconds. Like if I send you money now from my main bank to you, it's going to be immediate almost, right? And the fees are still sometimes quite high on Bitcoin, especially if you're, the thing with the fee system is on Bitcoin, right, is quite a regressive system in a sense that the fee is typically fixed for transactions. So if you're sending $20, sucks for you, you have to pay $10 fees. But if you're sending like $1 billion US, you still have to pay $10 in fee. So there are things within Bitcoin, like instability is not the issue that I have with Bitcoin. There's a lot of other issues with Bitcoin that are much worse. And there are, for example, Litecoin, right? Litecoin is much more environmentally friendly to produce than Bitcoin is, and it's a lot quicker and it's a lot cheaper. So why do people not use Litecoin? Actually, I don't know. When I want to send money from one exchange to another exchange, I almost never use Bitcoin. I use Litecoin because Litecoin is so much faster. It's almost immediate. It's like sending Maybank to you. And the fee is 0.01 Litecoin. Today, Litecoin is like $192. So basically, the fee is $2, 2 USD, which is almost never the case on Bitcoin or Ethereum because the fees are ridiculous on Bitcoin and Ethereum. So why do people not use Litecoin? It's actually a very good question. I myself wonder sometimes. I'm sitting with my crypto friends. I'm just like, why do people not use Litecoin? It's just so much better than Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin essentially has built this euphoria as well, right? It's the asset that has gone up whatever thousands of percent. It's outperformed Apple, Tesla, everyone. Your question, can it be displaced? I think very easily. It's definitely not impossible. But your question is actually connected to something which says something more stable is the part that I have a problem with, because I think if Bitcoin does get replaced, it's not going to get replaced with something more stable, because stable against what exactly is the second question, right? US dollar, then why not just use US dollar?
What I meant by that is another cryptocurrency that is probably more environmental friendly, that is more that doesn't fluctuate as crazily as as how Bitcoin has, and one that meets certain, so to speak, standards that everyone are a little bit more comfortable to, something that everyone can agree on, that kind of thing, and then that will be
what do you mean by agree on? Because you see, 10, 5 years
how
ago,
you
nobody
pointed out
agreed
earlier,
with
that there are some parties that are against it, but then again it comes back to it's decentralized, so there should be no one that has any form of authority on it. So maybe that's not the angle that I should be thinking about, but probably yeah. So let's take the energy. I mean, sorry, the environmentally friendly way to production. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you take it from that angle, I think there's a lot of cryptocurrencies that are already providing you that, right? Ethereum is a lot more environmentally friendly, and even though it's not a currency, it's slightly different, but it's a crypto which is way more environmentally friendly. And then there are so many which are so much more environmentally friendly than Bitcoin, but they're not the top. at the moment. And why exactly, for example, Litecoin's not higher than Bitcoin? It's probably because like Bitcoin was the first one and they're the more popular. And when people get into the industry, the open coin market cap, like I have opened, they see Bitcoin on top, and that's just the reason why Bitcoin is number one. And also Bitcoin led to the block innovation of the blockchain technology, and was pretty much the creator for it. That's probably the other reason why. But look, the stability part of it, right, is never going to come into Bitcoin. Never, like never ever, as long as Bitcoin exists. And then for that, you have to realize why, right? And the answer to that why is because you have to understand, right, that the supply of Bitcoin is fixed. So if in economics you study supply and demand, right, and a supply of something which is fixed is like this, right, like a straight line. And any changes in demand curves like will go along this way. Like, there'll probably be a better if I had like a drawing board with, but the demand curves that come up along the way actually lead to a substantial increase in price, right? So Bitcoin is also always going to be a substantially volatile good, because the demand is stable, it's fixed, right? Every 4 year when halving happens and the supply of Bitcoin halves, the demand of Bitcoin will stay either the same or increase, right? Over time, you can just safely assume that it's going to either increase or stay the same, give barring for something incredibly crazy happening like quantum computing becoming a thing. And I'll get into that as well. But essentially, the point is whether with a fixed supply and a increasing demand or demand staying the same, the price of Bitcoin is going to be volatile and increase or decrease every 4 years. Anything that is going to replace Bitcoin is going to work on a similar mechanism in terms of its supply. It's going to have a fixed supply. For this idea to work, we have to have fixed supply, right? Because one of the biggest problems that we have with fiat currency is that there's no top to the supply. There's no cap to the supply, right? Like, so like, for example, governments go around printing money whenever they want, is one of the criticisms we have of the system. How you fix that is you give something a fixed supply, but once you give something a fixed, you see something has to move, right? Like, so if you have unlimited supply, right, then you can keep what's in that supply stable. If you're going to cap the supply, then what's in that supply has to move, because value has to get generated mathematically somewhere, right? So it's either fixed supply or not fixed supply. If it's going to be fixed in supply, the price of it is going to change, like back in the day. Let's go back to when we used to use gold as well. And when gold was like the main way of like doing transactions, maybe there came a point when, like, tyrant king came in to your city, took over your city, and took all of the gold. So now, like, day-to-day users of gold or who want to buy things, they don't have that much gold to go around them. And so now, like, the shopkeeper is also like, guess what? The shopkeeper who's like keeping the shop, he also has to pay for electricity. Everyone has costs, right? The thing that happens with instability, unstable coin cannot be our currency. Why cannot unstable coin be our currency? Is the second question, right? It's like, oh, what about, like, if everything is going up, then how am I going to pay for like my milk? Because like the milk guy is going to charge me the same amount. Well, the answer is that the milk guy is not going to charge you the same amount, because guess what? If your currency has gone down, the cost of producing milk has also gone down. The raw materials that are used to produce milk have also gone down. And that's true for pretty much anything in the world. The idea why people don't want a fixed currency, right, is because, hey, if my when I say fixed, I mean fixed in supply. So why they don't want an unstable currency like Bitcoin, right, is because this idea is like, hey, if my currency is unstable, like, can I still pay for things? But the answer to that is that the cost of things is going to adjust with the price of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin goes from 50K to 10K, like 1/5, that means the cost of anything in this world has gone down to 1/5, pretty much. So back to, like, go back to when like gold used to be used, and like whenever there were like shortages of gold, it was not like you afford bread anymore, right? Like, like back, let's say like a tyrant king comes in, right? Before this, in the market there was 100 gold. After he steals all your gold, there's only 3 gold left in the market, like, let's say, right? It's not going to mean that the shopkeeper is still going to price bread at 5 gold, because in turn the guy who he's buying from wholesaling his wholesaler will also be selling him bread for cheaper, because in turn the wholesaler will not have any customers if he sells it, because knowing that there's no supply of gold in the market. So back when we used to use gold, whenever supply of gold became greatly reduced or wasn't there, the price of things actually went down, because that the cost of producing things went down, and then people knew that the supply is down. And then guess what, miraculously you discover a new gold mine, and now shopkeepers know, like, hey, I know there's a lot of gold going around these days, they will price things up. Basic supply and demand, right? So just to like basically come back to your question and relate what I have all said all with in relation to your question, can Bitcoin be displaced by something which is more efficient? Definitely. I think that is definitely one of the outcomes that can happen. When I look at like crypto industry from 100 years from now, right, I try to stay away from absolutes, that this is going to happen and this is not going to happen. So hard to say. The game tree can play out. So like imagine tomorrow US bans crypto like nobody's business. Like holding crypto is illegal. If you're in any way found to be owning crypto, you can go to jail for 10 years and have to pay $25 million to the US government, and they'll put you in Guantanamo Bay somewhere. If that kind of regulation came out, that's definitely going to put some people off using crypto. Like an average layman might just be like, I don't want to be part of that. So that's why I don't like to go by absolutes, and anything can happen. And so can Bitcoin be displaced? Yes, Bitcoin can definitely be displaced by something more environmentally friendly or whatever. Many different innovations. There could be innovations within Bitcoin which I can't even imagine and could happen, and that could be the new big thing that can come in. And Bitcoin, by the way, was also not the first cryptographic currency, right? Before Bitcoin, there were other. Cryptography has existed since 1970s. Since early 1990s, there have been forays into cryptocurrencies. People have tried to create cryptocurrencies, but those cryptocurrencies have failed because they probably didn't have one of the things that Bitcoin had. Like, one of the biggest things like Bcash existed before Bitcoin, right?
Right.
Double spend. But the problem that Bitcoin essentially solved was double spend, right? Like if it is in one place, it can't be another place at the same time, right? So Bitcoin was not the first cryptocurrency that came up, right? It came up in 2008. By that time until today, it's been the best one. Something that we can't even imagine could come up and just displace Bitcoin completely. Can that happen? Yeah, absolutely, it can. Right. And so yeah, like to answer your question, that can happen. Whether it's going to be something stable, I don't think so. I think that like if you're going to stay with the crypto line of things, it's going to be something whose mechanics are going to be like Bitcoin. The third thing you said was like, is it something which is acceptable to all people? That point is something that I don't really care for much, because like guess what? Like Bitcoin is on a daily basis. Like Bitcoin was unacceptable to most people, right? Today the idea of Bitcoin is a lot more open, a lot more people are in it. Who's to say that like the next bull run that happens in 2024, I believe, after the next halving, maybe more than 50% of the people in the world will be in Bitcoin at that time. And at that point, could you still say that Bitcoin is not? Because at that point, Bitcoin would have become more acceptable to the majority, right? So
Right.
it's see, there's a lot of concepts here, right? Like which are just like, I feel like in crypto, which are so hard for us to imagine, because there's so many ideas which have been engineered into our head, and it's so hard to get rid of them.
Right.
Money is definitely one of them, right? Like this the way that you are currently thinking about money, and most people, I would say 99% of people in the world think about money like you do, are like, I mean, it's going to change though. Like I mean, I think that money has to be stable. That's one idea that's definitely going to change, right? Like, because as I gave you a couple of pointers why, like, because it's this thing that's stuck in your head, that when you think that, hey, if money is not stable, then how am I going to pay for things? Because what if by tomorrow my money is half? Then how am I going to pay for things? But at that point, guess what? Everything in the world is going to be worth half. So your money is not going to be half. So unstable money is not really that hard a concept to grasp. Like, even if like Bitcoin goes to 1/100th of what it is today, then everything in the world will be worth 1/100th. It's not like some things, like it's the same thing. Like, imagine if you're going through a mega recession. It's the same thing with US dollars, by the way, or any fiat currency. Imagine we are going through a mega recession, and like basically the restaurants are still selling their food at the same price and not giving any discount. Like, like COVID ended, it was pretty obvious the economy is pretty bad, then all the restaurants, what they do to bring people back to the tables is to give them discounts and offers and stuff like that.
Right.
This even happens with fiat currencies, so yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I
So
mean that's pretty.
I think
Yeah.
you clearing it up like actually give me a clearer picture of how to approach thinking or about these cryptocurrencies and how they relate to us and what they essentially are. Uh, and I think I grasped quite a bit from how you've related it. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Actually, just sorry, before you ended there, right? I just remember something like if you actually are really interested in what I'm saying about like unstable money and it being a thing, this is something that I've recently got into. You should go read about Keynesian School of Economics, Milton Keynes. He's one of the most famous economists in the world, and traditionally most of the countries or school syllabuses and everything actually tend to stick towards the Keynesian School of Economics. Read about that and then start reading some of the other school of economics which talk about like, hey, what if money is not stable, and that's fine too. If you start going down those rabbit holes, you will begin to realize why it's okay if Bitcoin's not stable and it's actually money. So that's all I wanted to say about that. Like different schools of economic thoughts within economics can actually explain this.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have two questions though, and
Yeah.
it's different from what you've been explaining. But so when you started in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Was it 2017?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like end of 2016. Yeah.
End of
2017, pretty
okay,
much.
so
Yeah.
apart from like the time and the vast commitment to crypto trading and all that, like your initial investment, like how much did you put up into crypto itself? I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, so what happened at the time was I had gotten my bonus from my job. And I was like single at the time, not really many expenses and stuff like that. And I put like 90% of my bonus into it. And that sum would have been somewhere in the region of like 25 to 30K ringgit.
Around
And
30K ringgit? Right.
Yeah. And to be honest, after that, I've never put a single cent into crypto. I've never put anything else in.
And how much is all your crypto worth today in just 4 years?
So, okay, I'll tell you because I am, I guess, it's worth more than.
Yeah. What I'm trying to get at is you've had some amazing success here in just about 4 years, but it's hard for someone to not think of it as a way, like you mentioned earlier, you got to get your mind around it not being a get rich quick scheme. And you're one of the success stories in this space. And that's something that I think what people are struggling with, like in terms of like, let's say not post-pandemic, but like, because of the pandemic, they're looking for new answers, new ways going about like, and then come along these success stories, the boom of like Bitcoin again and stuff like that. And they might get into the idea of like doing it for these reasons, which are something that you are definitely recommending against. And I just see that, I see that, and I want to acknowledge that. And that's it's interesting how it is, because
it's like, I mean, look, if you're a good trader, it makes sense. And if you have done trading before, you could do it and you should definitely learn a bit. But honestly, to me, it's like if you're looking at crypto as a way of making money, for me, it's bad for a few reasons. First of all, like at this like last year, March, if you spoke to me, I would have told you to actually, my advice to you, even if you are someone who's like going through some crisis or whatever, like COVID or whatever, I would have said buy crypto. Because last year, just before the halving happened, the price of Bitcoin was $3,000. And after the halving happened, I was so confident that Bitcoin is going to go up like 10, 20. I said 10 times, okay? I had a bet with people that Bitcoin's actually is going to go 10 times from here. It's way exceeded what I bet on, right? Yeah. Because it's just a natural effect that Bitcoin takes after halving. But now when you're asking me in March 2021 and the price of Bitcoin is already 52K and it's like gone like what ridiculous multiples over the last 3 months. The whole market cap has like multiplied by like 6-7 times over the last 3 months.
Yeah, yeah.
At this time, if you're getting into like make money just by holding it, that's dangerous. Like that's like gambling. You might as well play poker.
Which brings you
But
back, brings you back to the earlier one. If you want to get into crypto, think of it as something that you want to do long term because you believe in the concept. Because you believe where crypto is
yes,
going to go one day, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the second point that I was coming into is because if you're using crypto as a way of making money and you make that money and then you go spend that, that's also a bit disastrous, right? Because like imagine you're someone who wants to accumulate Bitcoin for the future when like let's say like okay, it was a euphoria for me. I want to hold a lot of Bitcoin for when Bitcoin becomes $1 million, because guess what? Then I'll be like a multi-millionaire, right? That's my dream.
Yeah, yeah.
But imagine if I'm like going around spending Bitcoin every day, then I will never accumulate enough Bitcoin to make accumulate enough Bitcoin to make it to when it's $1 million.
Which brings me to my second question. Like you being a full-time trader and everything, like how did you pay for expenses if you didn't sell crypto? Or is it that you did sell, but it's like based off like how much you need for expenses and stuff like that? Like
Yeah, so that's a very good question, right? Obviously I did sell crypto at some point, but the thing is that what I do is that I try to keep my crypto account and my trading account completely separate. So like let's say right back in the day I put in like $100 into crypto and my $100 became $1,000. And so what I did was I took out another $900 is my savings. I took out another $100 from there and started trading from that. And I basically that trading accounts that I have and my monthly tradings or whatever, I definitely take money out of that to pay for my lifestyle, my expenses, and everything else. Like that goes with it, and that comes from the income I generate from trading. But yeah, I look at trading. See, this is why I keep on saying me holding my cryptocurrencies and investing in all these fancy projects is one thing, and me trading is completely different thing. It just so happens that this trading is within the crypto world, right? It could be it could have been a different trading, but look at these as two separate things.
I see. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
for sure. I mean, connected as well. I shouldn't say they're completely different, like, but they are connected. But like, my so-called hodls. Hodl is a term that gets used in crypto, right? It basically means holding crypto. I hodl crypto. My hodl and my trading accounts are completely separate. And some of my hodl accounts, like they're in a ledger. Like if you're someone who's going to own a lot of cryptocurrency at some point, right? A nano ledger
Right.
is the safest way of storing cryptocurrency. It's basically just a device which is essentially connected to the blockchain, and you can store all your Bitcoin and all other fancy cryptocurrencies on this little device. And this would basically mean that it is incredibly safe. It's unhackable, right? That's one of the aspects of Bitcoin or crypto that we didn't talk about today at all. The security aspect is that it's almost unhackable. But yeah, like, so to answer your question, I do. And you know what? Profit taking is always smart. I keep on saying that I don't take out money from crypto is also just to kind of get the people who are listening to this and get them to think along the right lines, right? Because like if you're just buying and selling every month, like that's not ideal. But like for myself, right, there was this project I got into, and this is honestly the project that has basically like made it for me in crypto, or I made it in crypto because of this project, and I hadn't have to trade for this project at all, right? It's called Nexo, and it's a crypto bank, right? Like just do your own research on Nexo and you'll find out why it's a great project. But it's a bank, it's a crypto bank. It offers pretty much any service that a bank would for cryptocurrencies, for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, for USDT, and all the different everything in between, right? And they were doing an ICO, an initial coin offering. They were launching as a company, and I, as a former banker, I definitely saw utility in why a crypto bank would be required and why this thing would be big. And I participated in the ICO, and it was like 8 cents during the ICO. Today, it's stable at around $2.50, $2.60. It's gone up like 26 times from basically its ICO. And I think back in the day, I invested like 4,000 USD, like 16,000 ringgit basically, which I believe was like 2.5 Ethereum or something like that back then. I can't really No, actually it was less. It was like 4 Ethereum or something like that. I can't really remember, like during the 2017 bull run. and then now it's worth like 25 times 16, whatever that is. You guys can do your maths, right? And that was pretty much my biggest, like, and you think about it, and so today when it's $2.50, I'm selling Nexo, right? When I said taking profit, I'm converting Nexo into Bitcoin, because one of my personal main aims of investing into cryptocurrencies is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible. So like when I buy like Nexo, my main aim there is to turn the, let's say the zero point 0.1 Bitcoin that I put into Nexo is now like worth 2.5 Bitcoin, right? And that's been my aim all along, to accumulate more Bitcoin. So what I'm now doing is I'm going and selling Nexo and keeping it in Bitcoin instead, right? Like my saving accounts are always in Bitcoin. I'm not taking that Bitcoin and going and spending on my life, but I'm taking profit into Bitcoin. And essentially taking profit is always smart, man. Like, sometimes people come to me and say things like, oh man, shit, I bought Bitcoin when it was 5 and then I sold it all when it was 10. I'm like, so what? You made money. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
Right.
But again, that's the speculative side of things. You shouldn't have sold it at 10 because you shouldn't have been in it for 5K anyway.
Very well said. Thank you, Umair. I think that has been
Yeah.
amazing. That you've given me and whoever's watching this not just the clarity on the matter, but in fact how you went about it and how you approach the trading, and separately the holding or hodling. Was it called hodling?
Hodling. It was a what do you call it? It was a mistyped tweet back in 2014, and it became a thing in crypto. Hodl, HODL. It's basically hold misspelled.
and that clears up a lot. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Hodl, man, diamond hands rocket. They said diamond hands will rock it. You need to have diamond hands when you're in crypto.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you liked the video. Umair will definitely be sharing more of his insights and views, and also his experiences in cryptocurrency and how he navigates the field and trading. Do let me know if you like it. If you like it, give us a like. If you want to know more, say in the comments if you have any questions in regards to cryptocurrency or blockchain tech in general or Bitcoin. Let us know. Once again, a reminder to all, this is definitely not one that is encouraging you to go into it. If it's informative, that's great. If you want to know more, please do your research. We encourage everyone to extensively do their research before going into something like this. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Take care, guys. See ya.